8 weeks of quarantine done. Wow, it's been a while. I hope you all had a good Star Wars day. What did I do? I watched The Empire Strikes Back, despecialized because it's the best and only way to watch the original trilogy. So that was awesome. So now that Star Wars Day is done and behind us, let's talk about another movie from when I was younger that I loved. Alice in Wonderland. This is Tim Burton's version I'm talking about. It came out in March of 2010, so it was the second half of 9th grade for me. This is the movie that more or less set the trend of the modern live-action Disney remakes, but this movie isn't really a remake. It can really more or less be seen as a sequel to the original 1951 cartoon film, since it does in fact take place 13 years after the events of said cartoon. So really the way I like to see it is that it's an Alice trilogy. You have the original cartoon from the 50s, then you have this 2010 film that is the sequel, and then you have Alice Through the Looking Glass, which is the sequel to this movie. And I reviewed that movie when it came out. You can check out that video if you want. But let's dive into this one. So Tim Burton's Alice in Wonderland stars Mia Wasikowska as Alice. She is a very strange, peculiar girl with a very vivid imagination. In fact, when I was watching it last night, I was like, you know, she's reminding me of Dickinson a little bit. You know, it takes place way back in the day when you had to be proper, but she just has a few loose wires up there. You can't deny it. She just has a very creative and colorful imagination, so much to the point where you might think she is a little bit mentally insane. And she's being told what to do, but she doesn't want to do it. She wants to be rebellious, like Dickinson. I've always liked characters like that. So Alice is 19 years old now, and once again, she follows the white rabbit down the rabbit hole and into Underland, or Wonderland as she calls it. And whereas in the original cartoon, which is more or less just a series of things she sees in Wonderland, because that's pretty much what it is. She goes to Wonderland, she sees a bunch of things, and then she wakes up. In this movie, she goes to Wonderland and she's given a task, because everyone in Wonderland is like, hey, it's Alice, we've been expecting you. We need you to defeat the Jabberwocky, which is this big dragon-like thing. If you defeat the Jabberwocky, that will end the reign of the tyrannical Red Queen. And again, it's a case of Alice's being told what she must do and who she must be. She wants to come into her own. And now we have our 2010 Alice in Wonderland movie. Now, when this first came out, I was so into it. I loved it. I loved the story. I loved all the characters. I loved the aesthetic. But watching the movie last night, it had been a few years since I watched it last. I've matured a little bit, and yeah, I do see some glaring flaws with the movie. I'm not gonna lie. Which I feel bad saying because, again, I loved this movie so much back in the day. I got it on Blu-ray, but I can't lie, I just do see some problems with the film. It's funny how maturity does that sometimes, huh? I mean, I do still like the movie. The good does outweigh the bad. I like Johnny Depp as the Mad Hatter, because he falls into the role. You know, Johnny Depp is in a lot of Tim Burton movies, because they work together all the time. And Johnny Depp plays a lot of cartoonish, zany characters. And he's good at it, what can I say? I mean, the Mad Hatter in this movie is not exactly like Jack Sparrow. He's a little crazier, he's a little more nonsensical. He speaks with different accents, like he switches accents throughout the movie depending on his mood. I like that. And you do hear his Jack Sparrow voice come through when he gets mad. You ran out on them to save your own skin. It's good, I like it. And I just love the world of Wonderland that Tim Burton has created for this movie. I still love the aesthetic. Everything is all topsy-turvy. All the little weird creatures like the rocking horse flies and the dodo bird, the talking flowers, the white rabbit, Tweedledee and Tweedledum. Although I gotta say, my favorite creature, you probably have guessed, is the Cheshire Cat. The Cheshire Cat in this movie is so awesome. I remember when I first saw the trailer for this movie and the Cheshire Cat came out of the woods with that big old grin, I fell in love with that design. I just love the design of that Cheshire Cat so much because that big old grin and the creepy eyes and the way he floats around and disappears. Just for me personally, the Cheshire Cat steals every scene he's in, even if he's not the main focus of the scene. Like the scene where they're all sitting at the table, it's Alice and the Mad Hatter and the Dormouse and the March Hare. The Cheshire Cat shows up, I'm like, alright, I'm focused on him now, because he's just the coolest thing in Underland. Plus he's voiced by Stephen Fry from V for Vendetta. He was also the Master of Lake Town in the Hobbit movies. He just lends that sleazy voice to the Cheshire Cat. I love it. Don't get me wrong, I also love the Cheshire Cat from the original cartoon, because he also played and messed around. All slavey were the borg crows and the mumras outgrabe. But this Cheshire Cat just beats it. It needs to be purified by someone with evaporating skills, or it will fester and putrefy. Alright, I think I've talked enough praise about the Cheshire Cat in this movie. Let's move on. Because as much as I love the whimsical vibe of Wonderland and its characters, there are a couple of characters that, watching it last night, I was like, oh, yeah, they're not as good as I remember them being. Those would be the queens. The Red Queen, the Queen of Hearts, played by Helena Bonham Carter, who rules over Underland with an iron fist. When I first saw it, I was like, oh yeah, well that's the kind of character that Helena Bonham Carter usually plays. She's just crazy. But now, watching it, I'm just like, she just yells all the time. She's just angry. She's a cartoon. Now, I get that Wonderland is supposed to be a cartoony place, but the Red Queen's yelling got to the point of annoyance with me. After watching the movie last night, I was like, I don't like her in this movie. I just don't. Again, it's funny how maturity does that sometimes. I look at this character, Erasabeth, and I'm like, wow, yeah, this is just not what I remember. And also, I'm sad to say, the White Queen, Mirana, played by Anne Hathaway. She's not as bad as Helena Bonham Carter, but the way she acts, she's always, walking around like this. She acts like a fairy princess from the original, 40s cartoon Disney movies, which works in the cartoons, not so much in live action. It's not as bad here as it is in the sequel. I watched the whole trilogy last night, but it is still somewhat bothersome. So those two characters, the Red Queen and the White Queen, they do drag the movie down a little bit for me now, but not enough to make the movie bad in my eyes. I mean, the movie is crazy. Like I said, it takes place in Wonderland, so everything is whimsical and fun and nonsensical. In some cases, physics-wise, you'll have to suspend your disbelief if you watch this movie. I mean, let's be honest, going into this movie, you gotta leave logic at the door, because you're like, oh, that thing that just happened, she would be at least really hurt right now. But you can let it slide because hello, you're in Wonderland. And there is something to be said for good visual effects, which this movie admittedly does not have a lot of. I mean, it was March 2010. Avatar had just come out a few months prior. CGI was just starting to look really good. Starting to being the operative phrase here. Like, we weren't at Guardians of the Galaxy yet, but we were past Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. We were in that zone where it was getting there. I'll admit, the VFX do look a lot better in Alice Through the Looking Glass. They did. They looked a lot better, surprisingly so. But like I said in my review of that movie, I can forgive bad visual effects if the story is really good. And guess what? I still find the story in Alice in Wonderland, for the most part, pretty good. I mean, there is that whole bit with the prophecy. They have this calendar scroll thing, this compendium. It's called the Oraculum. They show it to Alice early on in the film. They say it tells of each and every day since the beginning. And it tells the future, and it says, on this day, the Frabjous Day, you will slay the Jabberwocky. So it's like, oh, okay, well, if she is destined to defeat the Jabberwocky, then there's no real tension. So that does take a little bit of the excitement out of it. Just a little bit though, because I still find the movie very fun to watch. One of the best aspects of this movie is the score. In my review of Alice Through the Looking Glass, I said that the score in this movie is one of my favorite Danny Elfman scores, and there was a reason I said that. Because it is. Danny Elfman's score in this movie is so Danny Elfman is known for writing memorable themes, and this movie's score is no exception. Alice's theme is so good. You hear it throughout the movie. Da, 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 da. But if you wait till the credits, you'll learn that the theme actually has lyrics. Lyrics that are sung by a choir. And I don't know about you, but I just love it to death. So catchy, memorable, and hummable. Oh, Alice dear, where have you been? Oh. Mwah. In the end, Alice in Wonderland, I do still find enjoyment in it, but now that I've matured since it came out, I do notice some of the flaws. The visual effects aren't that great, the queen characters are a bit annoying, and the whole prophecy thing I could have done without. But other than that, I love the score, I love the world of Alice in Wonderland, I love the aesthetic, I love all the other characters, the Cheshire Cat is my man. I love the fact that this whole Wonderland place, you don't know if it's real or if it's in her head, cause throughout the trilogy you see strong evidence for both. So who's to say? So Alice in Wonderland, the Tim Burton 2010 film. Have you seen it? What do you think about it? And which Alice film is your favorite of the trilogy? The original 1951 cartoon Alice in Wonderland, Tim Burton's 2010 sequel Alice in Wonderland, or its sequel Alice Through the Looking Glass? Whatever you think, go ahead and leave a comment. And don't forget to subscribe.